Welcome to today's webinar on the COVID-19 employer support with a focus on leadership. Firstly, I just want to thank Trust Tairāwhiti for putting on these webinars. We had one the week before last on navigating the employer-employee relationship during a crisis, specifically around COVID-19 and responding the wage subsidy and communicating, as well as the health and well-being of your employees and of yourselves as business owners or managers. We did talk a little bit in that session about leadership, and today I just want to explore that a little bit further, take a bit of a deeper delve into leadership and link that back to a crisis situation and leadership in a crisis. The content is relatively broad-natured, and that's because we have a wide range of attendees from managers and business owners and across a different range of sectors. So I hope that we can provide a bit of a building block in terms of thinking about your own professional development and your leadership effectiveness during this time and into the future. So just quickly, a little bit about People Plus. We are a Gisborne local human resource and immigration consultancy service. So we support local businesses with everything associated with the employment life cycle. And that's a wide range of activities ranging from recruitment, selection, retention strategies, professional development, and pay and remuneration, and also difficult employee situations, disciplinaries, terminations and grievances. I'm Jenny, I am the director at People Plus, and I suppose over the years I have supported executive managers, business owners through some of the tough decisions in relations to people, but also working with them to develop their leadership and management effectiveness. I have a double degree in science with psychology, commerce degree, marketing and management, and a postgrad in human resources. But I have a really keen interest in human behaviour, and more so recently the neuropsychology of leadership, especially now with enhancements in technology. We as neuroscientists are able to study what's going on in the brain under different leadership behaviours. So, what is leadership? Well, really, it's about motivating people to act towards a common goal. Effective leaders can build relations with us, and in a sense, they're more in tune with us and have a resonant relationship with the people around them. It's different from management. Effective leaders have people that follow them, whereas managers will have people that work for them. Management is an important function of the role in the planning, the organising and the coordinating of the employees to be the best that they can in their role. But great leadership will inspire those people to follow them, to follow their vision, and all in turn make them more engaged and more productive, more creative, and overall have greater business success. It's important to have both management and leadership to run a successful business. Management's not separate from leadership, rather it's more of a component of leadership. So I thought it'd be good to do a little exercise. So if you've got a piece of paper handy, or think of it in your brain, a leader that you find that's effective, or somebody that you see as a good leader, whether you've had an opportunity to work with somebody like that before, they're going to be the kind of person that brings the best out in you, where they've created sort of that internal electricity where you naturally want to work for them and you want to be work associated with them in the activities that they do. They want to make you want to work harder for this person. Otherwise, think of somebody, an inspirational leader, a successful leader. And just have a quick think about why you feel that they're successful. What are the key things that makes them successful? And do you think that this comes naturally to them? Or do you think that it's something that they've developed over the years? And then I suppose, do they have any shortcomings? What shortcomings do they have? I've just picked two for the purpose of talking through some examples, and I think you can't compare these two in terms of leadership, but it's good to have the comparison. So Martin Luther King was an African American civil rights activist, and he had a dream, and he shared that dream with his people. He used his engaging personality and his unwavering commitment to sharing his vision with his people. He promised a positive change. And I suppose if you were an African American in the 50s, there'd be no reason why you wouldn't sort of aspire to want to follow Martin Luther King. So it's really easy to see why people followed Martin Luther King. But what about Adolf Hitler? He also had a vision, which he shared with the people. And he was able to inspire a mass following, which ultimately led to a movement of mass genocide. So the common thing that each of these leaders have is they both had a vision, and they presented that vision as a common goal with the people, and were able to unite that following. And I think the key thing is that they were able to project their emotions in a way that resonated with the people. Hitler, he used power and aggression, and he really relied on fear of the people as opposed to trust. Whereas Mr. King used inspiration and optimism to encourage and influence. Both were able to use their emotion to resonate with the audience, and they fostered a deeper connection with their followers. If you have time, if you haven't already, go back and look at some of their speeches. You can get English subtitles for Hitler's early speeches, and try and pick out the emotive language that he used in those speeches, and the same with Martin Luther King. Emotive language, but also I suppose the sharing of a common purpose is quite important there. So Hitler and Martin Luther King are said to have high levels of emotional intelligence, or what is often referred to as EQ. So this is really the ability to perceive and understand one's own emotions, but also the emotions of those around them. And it's using that ability to communicate effectively and build relationships and trust, and to connect on that deeper level. Emotional intelligence really involves our internal management system. And we can see that in four different ways. So the first is really self-awareness, the ability to recognize your own emotions and how they're affecting your behavior. And also your own strengths and weaknesses. Are you aware of what they are? And self-management, the ability to control those emotions in a healthy way, to use them to take initiative and to adapt to changing circumstances. And I think a really important part of that is also following through on your commitments. Social awareness is understanding the emotions of others, picking up on those cues, and also understanding the dynamics as you enter a new group. So if you join a new workforce or you're working with a new team, are you able to quickly pick up on the dynamics of that group to settle into that group quickly, successfully? And relationship management is building and maintaining those relationships, communication, and how you influence others or working in that team, and managing conflict. You really need to have a sufficient perspective to think outside of your norm and not be too narrow-minded. You really need to apply both your technical skills, but also think about how you can motivate others, thinking outside the box, being emotionally intelligent, and accessing your intuition. I think it's important to say gut feel, but I think it is coming from somewhere. So rely on that. So I wanted to give you some practical steps that you can take right now to focus on yourself and your EQ. Some of these you may already be doing, and that's great, but keep it up and think about how you can get better at it. So in regards to self-awareness, we've got this really unique opportunity right now because we've all gone through a really stressful situation. So if you, like most people, when we were going into lockdown, and that first sort of week or two that associated that, it was a really high stress environment. There was a lot of uncertainty. So you potentially felt some emotions, you potentially had trouble thinking straight or making rational decisions. And I think it's important to really take some time and take some time to reflect on that and what happened internally with yourself. What are you proud of? How did you handle certain situations, and what could you improve? And that self-management piece is that really learning from those behaviours and putting some goals in place. And you will have another situation. I think we'll see a lot of these over the coming months, but you'll have situations where your emotions are at play, and really reflecting on whether you've been able to improve in terms of the way that you respond to those. The other key factor about self-management is following through with your commitments. Are you able to follow through? Are you overcommitting? And do you need to get back to some people? It's a really key part of the way that you can lead. Social awareness is some key steps that you can take now is really reflecting on how you responded over the last couple of weeks in terms of your staff or your family, in terms of how kind of in tune were you with them, and reflect on that. And were you able to pick up on cues in terms of how they were feeling and knowing when to ask if they were okay, and slowing down and just having to think about that. In regards to relationship management, I know that we're all crazy busy and we have 100 things to do. So I think it's really important to develop your own personal communication plan. So whether that's write a list of the key people, both personally and work, that you need to stay connected with, and making sure that you get around to it, because it's too often that we see someone at the supermarket and we go, oh, it's been far too long. We feel a bit guilty about not connecting. So making sure that you're connecting and finding out how they are. Try not to talk about work, and try really just ask how you're going, how the family is, that type of thing. And that's going to really strengthen your relationships. And I've got there, make it authentic, you know. I wouldn't let other people know that you had a list, but that might be something that you need to do just in order to manage your time. I think the hardest part about these things is actually doing it. So it's great, we'll listen to the webinar and we'll think about these things for a brief moment, but it's hard to put aside the time for ourselves. So I do implore you to spend a bit of time and write it down. You may throw it out after, but writing it down is actually going to make you think about it. Okay, so what about the long term? So I think, again, continue to reflect on your emotions when they get the better of you, and even on occasions where they don't. So for some of us, we fail to show appropriate levels of emotion when others need it. So when someone comes to you and they have a situation or an issue, sometimes we fail to show the right level of emotion, so to show that we care. So reflect on those situations as well if you notice them happening. And often it's just about being more present in the moment. Invest in your own learning. I think it's a really important part of being a successful leader is to have confidence. And confidence is going to come by knowing and being confident about those actions that you need to take. And that's going to gain the trust of your followers. Take time to invest and develop, and remember that you don't need to be an expert at everything. Rely on your employees and empower them to make those decisions. Build relationships, focus on people, build loyalty and trust, and consistently deliver on what you promise. But provide structure for your employees to complete their goals. Plan your communication with the workforce. Think about the messages you're delivering and are they clear? Do they link to the organisation's goal or vision or values? And is it engaging? Does it suit your audience? So sometimes you'll have to deliver the same message in a number of different ways. So how you deliver it to your management team might be different from the way that you deliver it to your workforce. Less numbers, less data, for example. And I think the key thing is make sure you're not over the top. Don't hold the spotlight too much, and give your other staff the opportunity to speak, because that's going to develop them as well. And finally, create enthusiasm and be positive. I think with small businesses locally, it's very easy to be quite friendly with our staff, and you may feel like it's appropriate to share with them your stresses around work, but I would try and keep those, try and find somebody that you trust, a business mentor or another business owner, to talk about the hard stuff, and keep from talking about that with your staff. At the lower level, I mean, a management team is fine, but not sharing your financial woes is helpful. So we had this slide in the webinar last week, and I talked about Jacinda's leadership during a crisis. And I suppose whether you're a supporter or not, you have to admit that she's demonstrated effective leadership in a time of crisis. She's really good at using emotion in her communication, and she's focused on a shared vision and a common goal. And it has worked. Largely, the country is respecting her and the lockdown rules. And I think everybody feels part of that journey that we're going on together. I can't stress the importance of a clear communication plan. Think about what you're going to say before you say it, and make sure it's authentic and people can follow. I think the bottom, I'm not going to go through these because we went through them last time, but I think the bottom point is some really good examples that we're united and we can do this together. Today I heard her say something that was, it's like, it's going to take a team of 5 million to get there. So that real sort of team and together language, and think about how you can do that in a way that comes across as team building and natural. There's a couple of other actions or points I would implore you to add to the list when it comes to leading in a crisis. I think educate yourself on COVID-19. The regulations are changing all the time. And I think if you can front foot the decisions, you're going to come across as more prepared and confident. Make sure that you're getting your information from a reliable source. Try and avoid the unreliable points of information. I think delegating to your team and putting the trust in them and empowering them to be part of the decision-making process is important. Remember to manage yourself and focus on your own well-being, taking time to allow yourself to recover from the psychological stress that's been the last few weeks. We talked a bit about that last week. Don't try to do everything at once, and don't try to expect too much from others. And I think make a habit of taking a moment at the end of each day or at the end of each week to reflect on the people that have helped to make that day a success. Make a note of thanking people for their contributions and recognising their efforts in an authentic way. You need to keep your confidence and your resilience up. Make sure that you reflect on times for you that have gone really well, because that's going to help to boost your confidence. Stay both mentally fit and well, and physically fit and well is going to help maintain your resilience. But trust your instincts and trust the experts that you have around you. We're all going through this together. So I can't stress the importance of relying on a business mentor or your HR support or your accountant support or another business owner to really share in what we're going through. So at the start, I talked a little bit about management and leadership, and we've talked a lot about leadership, but we know that we need both to be successful in terms of being a great leader. So if you're going to lead any individual group, you really have to know firsthand the challenges that your workforce is facing. You need to know the barriers to their success and how their current level of skill matches the tasks of the job. Only then, I suppose, are you going to be able to help to accomplish more. So great managers really understand those details. Their managers will immerse themselves in the business in a way that gives them the understanding that they need to lead it effectively. Some key considerations I want you to think about during this time is having a plan. It's going to ensure that your productivity is maximised and that the staff have a sense of direction. Make your plan simple and ready to change, because if you over-engineer it at the moment, likely you're going to be back to the drawing board next week. Seek feedback from your staff, because often it's your staff or the people at the front face that are going to come and present the new creative ideas and the better ways of doing things. Think about your workforce planning in the immediate future in terms of how you're going to respond to unexpected absenteeism and reduced productivity while everyone's going through this. But also, what are your plans at working at alert level 2 and 3? And your workforce, if your business suffers from a revenue downturn. And what does that look like? If you can have a good idea about that, you're going to be ready to make those tough decisions if you need to in terms of your staffing numbers. And being more prepared is going to make that a lot easier. I think it's really important to think about both mental health and well-being as well as safety. So there's a lot going on for people, and when we've got a lot going on in our minds in terms of uncertainty and the stress or the unknown, that's when we can become a bit more complacent, and that's when accidents happen. So just keep that in mind. I think it's really important to continue to have the difficult conversations when they're needed, and we're seeing quite a bit of this in the essential services staff. And I don't know whether that's because of the unknown or some of that is coming out of the fact that the rest of their family is potentially at home and they're going to work on minimum wage. So we are seeing a lot of need for disciplinaries and crucial conversations. But I think you need to maintain your level of expectation. And if you let that drop, it's just setting a new standard for the rest of the workplace. So try and keep that there with consideration of what else is going on around you. And I think if you are having those crucial conversations, whether that's a verbal or something more serious, such as a written warning, you need to make sure that you are giving some crucial information back to them in writing, because when someone's confronting us with things that we've done wrong, it's very hard for us to hear the message clearly. So being able to read that later will help to get the message through. Cool. So I mentioned a little bit at the start about my interest in neuroscience, and I wanted to kind of relate back to what we've talked about, back to some of the findings in neuroscience. So now they're measuring, using fMRIs to measure brain activity. And it's giving us a lot more insight and a lot more science behind leadership theory that we weren't able to have in the past. I think there's one interesting finding that I'd like to kind of talk about in terms of the management and the leadership. And that's that we use different networks in the brain to process analytical or technical or procedural tasks, called the task positive network. And we use a different network in the brain to process social problems. So responding to somebody that's maybe asking for help or someone that's presenting as emotional. And that's called the default mode network. What we know is that when you use one of these networks, you suppress the other network, and vice versa. So when we focus too much on the technical, financial, or task operations, we're suppressing the social network. I'm sure you've all heard of somebody, or you've even said it yourself, as a person and saying, oh, he's a great technical expert, but potentially not the right person for the management or leadership position. This person may have just spent too much of their career working in the technical space and not spent enough time developing or understanding the importance of being emotionally aware. Being task-orientated leads us to focus, solving problems, and efficient execution of clearly defined objectives. But being an empathetic leader can increase the employee motivation and engagement. It can encourage creativity, and it's essential for ethical decision making. So to be effective, we really need to be able to jump in and out of these different brain networks. So the challenge really is, how do you develop both networks, and how do you keep that up? And you can do this on the job. So you can do formal training, but you can do this on the job. So just make sure that you're spending time on both operations, say financial, task-focused actions, as well as ensuring that you dedicate time to clear your mind and to be reflective or be creative, and to consider the values and behaviours of yourself or the impact on others. Doing the exercises that we talked about earlier is going to develop that default mode network. So we offer development opportunities that really help to develop that default mode network and develop your self and social awareness. We provide a one-on-one leadership development program which provides insight into your personality characteristics. Using the Hogan's Personality Assessment, which is based on 30 years of research by two well-known psychologists in the States. I've had exposure to a wide range of psychometric assessments, and the Hogan's assessment is my preferred, as it considers two perspectives on your personality: identity and reputation. And identity is the you that you know as yourself, whereas reputation is how others see you, or how you're showing up day to day based on their observations. I think it's really important for us to understand that how we see ourselves is not always how others will see us. So on this program, you complete an assessment online, and then we work with you to decipher the results and how this applies to your work environment and to you. There's 3 reports that we work through called the bright side, the dark side, and the inside. And I'll just give you a quick preview of a snippet of those reports, just so you can have a look. So the first one, I suppose, is the bright side, or the potential profile. And this is really your reputation, how others would describe you day to day, and your strengths as a leader or a manager. It's important to know that there's no right or wrong or preferred personality type, but there is development opportunities in all levels. So this report shows a level or a range of scores on a number of different attributes. And I suppose if we look at ambition, so this person is a very ambitious person. So they're going to be really comfortable of taking charge in situations. But they may also be intimidating or potentially railroading of others. So once they have this insight, they can there's a bit of science behind them to go, oh yeah, I need to be mindful of that when I am jumping and putting my hand up to take on new opportunities. The second one is the dark side, and we're really looking at behaviours that will show up under times of stress and pressure. And this is going to be if you have your guard down, and they're not always going to be derailers, but it's important that once you know what they are, then you can turn those traits into strengths. We'll quickly bring that one up. Cool. So this, so for example, if we look there, so here we're really looking at the scores sort of in that 95% and above range, or in the high range. And so this is potentially where you could fail in terms of stress. And if we look at this individual, you see that cluster in the middle there, the bold, mischievous, colourful. So this kind of person in times of stress is going to be that kind of person that's going to be too present. They're going to be in your face a little bit. They're going to be a bit loud and outgoing, and that's the way that they're going to cope with the pressure situation. So once they're aware of that, there's really good traits in that, but it's just being mindful of not being too over the top with that. And the last one there is what we call the inside. So that's your motives, values, or preferences. And what drives you, I suppose, what type of environment that you want to thrive in, or what you're really going to bring to a role. So we'll just have a quick look at that one. So just really quickly, so this person, we look there, they're really high hedonism and really high affiliation. So what that means is they're going to be someone that loves a balance of work and play, and somebody that really needs a lot of social connection. So if you knew this profile about yourself or about one of your staff members, you would know that working from home right now for them is going to be really tough. They need that social contact. So I think that this report is really powerful if you're a manager and you have this report for managers below you, and that you really know what's driving them. So this person it needs a lot of recognition. They need opportunities where they've got that high level of power. So we'll see that with the ambition as well. So it's really helpful for you as an individual to know that, and also know the unconscious bias that come with those values or those motivators that you might have. I suppose this exercise is not about changing who you are. It's about becoming more self-aware. And knowing how your actions and your personality may impact others. It's a really powerful tool to invest in, and having this assessment completed is going to be really helpful to develop your own self-awareness and also your social awareness. Cool. And there's one other workshop that we offer. These are just kind of off-the-shelf packages that we have going at the moment. So we do a team workshop called Self-Awareness and Intentional Change. And this is a fun exercise where we kind of work in teams of sort of anything from 3 to 12 to 15. And it's best when you do it with the team that you work regularly with on the day-to-day. First of all, you understand a little bit about yourself and your own personality style, and then about the personalities of the team. So what drives you, what you're potentially going to naturally gravitate towards in terms of tasks or types of tasks. And then we look at how you can communicate, or how you can adjust your communication to to work more effectively with each other. We also try and apply this out in the world. So we take what we learn and we try and identify personality types so that you can be a more effective communicator. So for me in this exercise, I know that I'm quite a dominant personality type, and that doesn't always work well with others. So often I need to take a step back and provide more time or thinking space for people, as opposed to give me the answers now. I really enjoy this workshop because it breaks down all of this stuff at a really basic level, and it's a bit of fun. It's typically about an hour and a half to 2 hours long, depending on whether sometimes we add a bit more in there if there's a particular thing going on in that workplace that we want to try and focus or work on. Cool. All right, so really keen to have feedback in terms of this webinar. We have 2 more coming up in response to the COVID-19 and trying to relate back to COVID-19. So on Tuesday next week, we have the Motivating Your Staff on Return to Work. So I'll send you all out the details of that meeting. I think there's going to be a lot of challenges in terms of going back to work. So for some people, they've been at home on 80% of their wages and they've had a great time not doing anything. And it's going to be hard to go back to work for 20% more, you know, post-holiday blues. And then you're going to have those people that are just desperate to get back to work. They need the income, or they need the change or the challenge. But I do think that there'll be new challenges, not only with the new restrictions, but the change and the uncertainty in the environment. So I want to really talk about that and some strategies that you can deploy to focus on motivation and productivity and communicating that with your staff. And then I think the following Friday, we are going to run the restructuring and redundancy session. So hopefully nobody needs this, but if we're not sugarcoating anything, we are predicting a downturn in the economy, and it's really important to be prepared for that. And we, unfortunately, too much experience working with employers through restructuring and redundancies, and a lot of learnings that I really want to share with you in terms of how you can do this so to protect the mental health of yourself and those employees, and to do it in a way that helps you sleep at night and makes you feel a little bit less stressed about it, and you know, that you can still run into these staff that you've had to let go at the supermarket and have a conversation with them. So it's really about not applying, having a solid process to meet your obligations under the employment law, but also doing it in a way that that's really going to work well for that dynamic or that relationship in terms of the staff that you're working with. Cool. And that is all for today. So this is a recorded session, and we will have an opportunity for questions at the end of next week's session with the group.